Lead, good hits. Four, good kill, good kill. Three, I'm taking damage. Three, ejecting. Four, request permission to attack. Leader firm. Gun from four. Four, good hit. Four, good kill, good kill. Four, RTV. Leader firm.
Cleared to land, runway 13, tower.
Howdy folks, Sauber here. Welcome back to the channel. Bah. I'm just kidding. The goat is watching you from Goat Simulator. Man, I haven't played that game in a long time. Anyway, yeah, I made that little goat symbol to be referenced from Goat Simulator, because why not? But anyhow, today's video, we are going to be taking out the American helicopters, the AH-1G and UH-1C XM-30, into some helicopter realistic battles. And yeah, I've already got my own detailed skins from my helicopters. The interesting thing is, it's actually easier, at least in my opinion, to create a custom skin for a helicopter than an aircraft. I think the reason being is that, for one thing, you can make a camo skin on all over the plane, helicopter, because when it comes to a plane, you don't really camouflage the bottom or the belly of the aircraft. So there's a bit more detail to that, and adding decals to the wings and such. Whereas with the helicopters, you just focus on the fuselage itself, and that's it. But anyhow, I'm taking out the two American choppers you see here, because in my honest opinion, at least for helicopter RB at the moment, I don't know what the deal is, but they are winning a lot. Now, I don't know if it's because more people are simply playing the American helicopters, because as I mentioned in a previous video, more people bought the pack for the, the Huey pack. But nonetheless, I think one of the main reasons is because, for one thing, the AH-1G is a real good performer at for a starting helicopter. I mean, you have the two miniguns, 4 if you want the upgrade, although later on I just used the 2 nose mounted because I got confused with the tracers, because the ones in the nose will rotate, whereas the ones on the wings are static. So when I saw 2 different sets of tracers, I tried to correct it, and then that would confuse me, But at any rate, the 2 miniguns on the starter helicopter, or reserve helicopter, excuse me, if you want to call it that, the AH-1G, are just superior to that of the Mi-4, which has only a single 50 caliber gun. And on top of that, the AH-1G, while it is really slow and not very powerful in terms of engine power, it's small and it's maneuverable. Whereas the Mi-4, it's big. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Mi-4 was originally a utility/rescue helicopter. But at any rate, it was converted into an attack helicopter, which it was a start, but at least in War Thunder terms, I guess it's not really its big mainstay. Don't ram me, brother. I thought that other AH-1G was going to ram me, and the only problem with the AH-4 is that it's rather weak in terms of protection. I mean, I know the helis don't really have armor per se, but it seems to be more susceptible to engine damage than the Huey. Because I've taken some good hits in the Huey, and it took a long time for my engine to, or let me rephrase that. It took a while for me to actually be shot down to the point where I couldn't remain in the air. Whereas with this, I get hit in the engine, and that's pretty much it. I just glide down to earth. On the bright side, unlike an aircraft, if you're in a helicopter like this one, if you get shot down, you're more likely to survive because it can at least hover for a little bit, unless you're, at like 5,000 feet, which is not very the optimal combat altitude for helicopters in general. But anyway. So, and then with the Huey, it has those amazing 30mm cannons. Yeah. While you have to choose between carrying cannons, rockets, or MGs or ATGMs, personally, I prefer, at least in helicopter RB, to take the cannons. Because sure, you could use the rockets to take out some pillboxes and artillery and the know-how. The cannons will last you a good long time. Because you got 1,200 rounds, or excuse me, 1,200 30mm rounds at your disposal. And they're in turrets, meaning that they're not static like the MGs are, or at least the wing-mounted MGs are on the AH-1G here. Although, when it comes to the 30mm on the Huey, oh man, 1,200 rounds are going to last you a long time. You can take out artillery, you can take out some light vehicles, and oh my goodness, you can even take out light pillboxes. Light pillboxes offer a huge reward if you take them out. And it's especially easy with the 30mm. But going back to, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, excuse me, I'm really excited here about the helicopters. With the Huey, they are especially amazing at taking out other helicopters as well, because the 30mm just pack a punch. If you want to go smaller scale and use the miniguns on the AH-1G, they are also good at ultimately shredding enemy helicopters. And on later variants of the Mi-24 Hind, for example, you can also carry the 23mm gun pods. The problem is that you have a very small amount of ammo. So you have 2 pods with 2 guns each, and they each only have 125 rounds per gun. 500 rounds total. Now that might seem like a lot, but keep in mind these are rapid fire cannons. I don't know what the exact rate of fire is on the GSH-23s, but what I do know is that when I tested them in a test flight, I went through them in less than 8 seconds. It was crazy. So yeah, and then of course the Mi-24s, they're rather large attack helicopters. And don't get me wrong, they are fun to play, especially in helicopter arcade. But in RB, I don't know, they just don't fare well against the American helicopters. Now, as you've seen, they can shoot down the American helicopters easy, and I've been shot down a number of times using my helicopters, but I don't know why. For a majority of the time, the American teams do win most of the battles. So, yeah, it's very interesting to see how these helicopters play out with the current meta. And I have to admit, I'm still getting used to this new meta because helicopters have only been around for a few weeks. And that brings me into the next topic. Why aren't more people playing the helicopter the helicopter versus helicopter mode, be it RB or AB? Why only tank RB? I'm not saying you should not use a helicopter and tank RB or anything. I use them from time to time. But a number of people have complained, like, oh, the helicopters are bad in Tank RB, and I'm like, that's because you're not playing them right. Like, the AH-1G and the MI-4, you can spawn in from the beginning of the game. But that's not a good idea. Why? It's because they literally take up all of your spawn points. All 450. So unless you can destroy a tank or two, if you get shot down, it's straight back to the hangar. The hangar. Excuse me. So, yeah. So how should you play the helicopters? Well, one of the main predominant issues in Tank RB when it comes to the helicopters, yeah, that was weird. To deviate a little, I shot down that Hind with my miniguns, and then I fired some rockets at him, knocking out his crew, and I got an assist. So first I got credit for destroying, and then I got an assist for finishing it off. It's really interesting how that works. Because one time, there was an occasion where I was tailing a teammate helping him target an enemy fighter. I forgot what I was flying. He gets shot down while I'm still firing at the guy in front of him. His tail rips off. He swings back towards me. I knock out his pilot, and I'm like, oops, did I get a TK? And then it said, enemy kill assist. And I was like, wait a minute, what? So I checked the replay, and now, bear in mind, I don't know if this has been fixed, because this was like 2 patches ago in 1.77, but apparently what had happened was he got shot down by an enemy, right? But because he swung upwards and into my line of fire, I accidentally knocked out his pilot, but somehow it registered as an enemy kill assist. I don't know. But that's the only time I've observed that, at least from an unintentional TK, if you want to call it that. But I haven't seen it ever since. Anyhow, going back to the helicopters in Tank RB, one of the most predominant problems is that, as you've seen in Fly's video, and I've even done this myself in a custom battle, you can take rank 1 aircraft. Just thinking about it cracks me up. Like a Key 10, for example, and shoot down a helicopter with ease. Be it, most of the times the helicopters are not paying attention to their surroundings. They're in their gunner views, or gunner scopes, whatever you want to call it, guidance system, and they're launching ATGMs onto the tank battlefield from afar. And you're in hover mode at a safe distance, which generally, sure, where you're shooting from, you're a safe distance away from anti-air and would-be tankers that would try to use ATGMs or even main standard ordnance, you know, like tank shells. Because I remember playing as my MBT-70 the other day, and I was trying to shoot at an MI-4 from a great distance, but it was beyond the range of my ATGM. So I was like, okay, I won't bother with that. Then I tried 20 millimeters. Then I tried my main save-up rounds, and I still couldn't hit him. So I was like, okay, I won't worry about him as long as he doesn't shoot me. So I got destroyed by another tank. So I was like, okay, I'll just get into a jet and take care of him. And that's what other people do. If you get destroyed or you have the opportunity to take an aircraft of any kind, oftentimes the first target of choice the helicopters. Because sure, I've been shot down by helicopters whilst using a plane. But nonetheless, it can be easy to shoot down a helicopter using a plane, especially if the helicopter is not aware that he's under threat. So that begs the question, how do you use a helicopter in Tank RB? My personal advice, and I have to admit Fly does share this opinion also, save the helicopter for last. I know, some people would be like, but I want to play my helicopter. Well, I do too. But if you want to use it in Tank RB and not in the dedicated helicopter versus helicopter mode, then you gotta learn when the best time to use it. Now, obviously, there's no guarantees, but you can at least try your best and like use it late game and just use it for cleanup, essentially. Because if you use it at the start of the game or the middle of the game, chances are you're going to get intercepted, shot down, and either forced back onto the ground or back to the hangar. Yeah. Alright, so the next subject. What other activities could we receive with helicopters? In other words, like battle modes, battle tasks, and so on. Because in RB, I'm pretty sure the RB is just being tested at the moment, because it's just the one Vietnam map. When they could add in the future, and I hope they add in the future, other maps, like maybe like a Siberia map based on Volcalamsk, for example. Or perhaps, you know, a Middle Eastern map with, you know, the Hueys and maybe, or sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, with, you know, Middle Eastern map. Like the one we have in the game at the moment. And then, as for activities, like at the moment in our, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, really sorry. With the realistic mode, you just destroy the static ground units, such as, you know, the artillery, light pillboxes, and if you're daring, the tanks, because, you know, they are protected by anti-aircraft artillery, or SPAA. And that stuff, sorry, I couldn't resist. That is something you don't want to mess with. Now sure, you could use ATGMs if you're using a late era helicopter with plenty of ATGMs, so that you can engage them from afar using a good sufficient amount of ATGMs. At the same time, you could also go in, guns blazing and rockets firing, but that would be rather risky. Because, sure, the anti-air is nowhere near as accurate as player control anti-air, thank goodness, but it's still anti-air nonetheless. And sure, you might be able to get a few, but you'll still get damaged significantly and maybe even shot down by them. So, your primary objective, mainly, is just to focus on the static units, you know, the pillboxes, the artillery, and other helicopters. I mean, sure, you could go after the tanks and anti-air, but like I said, it's oftentimes not worth the risk. At the same time, if there is somebody that's daring enough to go after your ground units, for example, you can simply follow your allied anti-air tracers and realize, okay, there's an enemy over there, I know exactly where he is, and I'm going to intercept him. So yeah, it's pretty fun in that regard. You can just, if it's especially useful if like there's the last guy and you don't know where he is, and then out of the blue you see your friendly anti-air opening up and you're like, there he is, I'll go after him. Now this brings me to the concluding subject. What else could we expect from helicopters? Like more missions and objectives? Because in realistic it's pretty static at the moment, but it's still fun for the time being, at least for me. Because you can just focus on some ground units, and then other helicopters, and boom, the mission's done. And you can still earn plenty of RP if you're using a premium helicopter towards the other helicopters. But in Helicopter Arcade, the objectives you can do, and my personal favorite is the domination mode, where there are, get this, there are 7, or is it 5 or 7? Excuse me, 5 capture points instead of 3. So you can't say attack the E point yet, so maybe they'll fix the radio commands for that. Because one time they were capturing Zone E and Zone F, and I was like, I couldn't say attack the F point, so I said attack the D point, and everyone was like, what? And I was like, sorry, there is no radio command for it. But yeah, so what it is you take your helicopter and you just, it's just as simple as it sounds. You just go to a capture point and land on it. The only issue I see with it, and I've mentioned it in my Helicopter Arcade video, is that you capture the zones way too quickly. Literally in less than 2 seconds flat. Yeah. So if you have allies with you that want to capture a point with you, you have to decide who gets to cap, because considering you have to land firm on the ground, you can't just hover over it, it could potentially, and I almost did this at one point, not on video, but where I tried to capture a point, like race a teammate to the capture point, and I almost crippled my helicopter because I broke off one of the landing skids, and I was like, oops. But, and needless to say, I did not get the capture point. My teammate did. But, yeah, it would be kind of fun to assist your teammates in capturing the zone. Maybe an 8-second cap time, kind of similar to how it is with ground forces, because when it comes to ground forces, especially the top tier, it's good etiquette to wait short of a capture point, if it's safe to do so, and allow your teammates to get close to you, and then you all go into the cap together and reap the rewards. So it'd be nice if they could do something similar for the capture points with helicopters. And then, what other targets and mission objectives could we expect to see with helicopters in the future? Could there maybe Could there maybe be convoys we can go after and defend? Because after all, there are trucks and other ground units in the test flight for the helicopters, like the Studebakers and the Gauze trucks. Kind of makes you wonder if in the future they might add like a convoy mode, but with helicopters, where one side has to protect their convoy and the other side has to destroy the first side's convoy. And then maybe we could also have some PT boats to go after also as part of the mission on coastal maps. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you could expect to see with helicopters in their mission objectives, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, I am definitely looking forward to seeing the continued development of helicopters. And as a little PSA, for those who are, wanting to get more out of the experience of their helicopter gameplay, for those that usually just do tank RB with helicopters, give helicopter versus helicopter mode a try. Be it arcade or realistic. I personally recommend arcade, mainly because it has both helicopter nations in the battle on both teams, and it's well fine-tuned that way. Because I guess the main issue is like whenever something new is added for the first time, in this case it's a new type of vehicle added to the game, there's going to be some trial and error, especially when it regards to balancing. Because if you look back to 2014, when tanks were first added to War Thunder, it was just Germany and Russia. The Russians almost always predominantly dominated the German teams in a number of battles. But over time, as more vehicles and more nations were added, things were smoothed out and fine-tuned. Likewise, I feel that the same will happen for helicopters, but for now, it's for the Americans in realistic. But anyway, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you are enjoying the videos so far. They are fun to make, and I certainly enjoy the positive feedback I receive. So until next time, have a great day. Peace out.